Thank you, Chair Webster and Ranking Member Carbajal, for holding this hearing. The decision by former Coast Guard leadership to conceal the existence of Operation Fouled Anchor hurt the Coast Guard, its reputation, and the Coasties serving our country. Former Coast Guard leadership chose not to inform Congress of Operation Fouled Anchor and then hid the findings and recommendations from the public and other Coasties. Had the findings and recommendations from OFA been acted upon in 2018, the Coast Guard could have already implemented meaningful reforms. Instead, these actions sowed distrust among its workforce. So we want to hear today from Deputy Commandant on how the service plans to rebuild trust and ensure its workforce is supported in the future. Culture change can create a more tolerant, accepting, and supportive workforce, and one that is better prepared to complete its mission. With an estimated shortage of roughly 4,800 members, the Coast Guard has both a moral and functional need to implement culture change, so women and men want to join and stay in the service. While culture change is ultimately about changing the behavior of people, getting there is going to require significant resources. For instance, the Coast Guard recently started an integrated primary prevention program to help prevent suicide, sexual assault, harassment, domestic abuse, and child abuse through community engagement, policy programs, and improved practices. However, this Coast Guard program is staffed by one person, while the Department of Defense has over 1,000 staff for a similar program. Ranking Member Carbajal and I sent a letter to the Appropriations Committee last month urging the inclusion of an additional $21.8 million for the Integrated Primary Prevention Program in the final FY24 funding bill. If included, that funding would enable the Coast Guard to immediately begin hiring new civilian employees. In addition, the service needs funding for improvements to human resources, information technology, improvements to governance and oversight at the Academy, enhanced training and professional development for the workforce, and a more robust and sustained support for victims. While the Coast Guard deserves criticism and increased oversight for its handling of sexual assault and sexual harassment, I believe that under the leadership of Admiral Fagan, the service is now on the right path. The Coast Guard, therefore, deserves the support of Congress in addressing this issue. It is facing a budget shortfall that includes a $3 billion shoreside infrastructure backlog and ballooning costs associated with the construction of polar security cutters. Especially when it comes to sexual assault and sexual harassment, we cannot ask the Coast Guard to do more with less. The Coast Guard is a $20 billion service operating on a $13 billion budget, and the women and men who serve in the Coast Guard deserve better. They deserve dorm rooms that are free of asbestos. They deserve access to affordable housing and childcare. They deserve workplaces and technology that assist rather than hinder their mission. And above all, they deserve a work environment free from sexual assault and harassment. So my colleagues will join me in making the case for increased funding for the Coast Guard to address these and other issues. Thank you, and I yield back.